Welcome to, I guess, the how to play slash setup for Cozy Oaks, which is the newest game here, created by myself, Peter Jank. Basically, I just wanted to go over a quick how to play, how to set up, kind of get a good understanding of how this game works and some of the mechanisms in the game. First thing I do want to note is these playmats right here, though they're super nice and I really love them a lot. They will not come in the base game, but they will be sold separately. So if you do like the way they look, it does help with the setup itself as well. But if you do like the way they look, they will be available for purchase as well. So basically the setup's pretty simple. You're going to get several of these mini decks, and you're going to separate each one of these mini decks into their like piles. So crops, animals, items, food, forageables, slimes, and then the fish. And of course the ores. And then once you've done that, you're going to place them out just like you see here. And again, this will all be explained in the rules, but you'll have 3 cards that will be drawn randomly from the top of the deck for each one of the crops, and then the animals, and then lastly, the items here. Here are the food, and there's going to be 2 food cards that are drawn from there, placed face up. The forageables and the ore decks are just shuffled and then placed face down in a face down deck, like you see here. And then lastly are the slimes and then the fish. Each one of these will be shuffled, and then 4 slimes will be placed, as well as 4 fish will be placed. You'll leave spots for some discard piles. That's what these little trash cans represent here on the playmat. And that's the town board itself. Underneath the town board, you'll have your player farm. If you're playing 2 players, then you'd have a second player farm, which I do have, but I'm going to kind of show you what the setup for 1 player is like. Basically, in a player board, you're going to have a spot for your basic house, and then you're going to have a greenhouse plot. This is kind of just like your rundown greenhouse, and then same thing here with your windmill plot. Each one of these 3 structures can be upgraded, so basically, once you pay enough gold, you can see that the windmill now is all cleaned up and ready to be played normally. And then you're going to also have these garbage cards, which are, you've got a light garbage card and a heavy garbage card, and each one of those is going to be in a row. So that spot's going to be for your crops, and then this spot's going to be for your animals. Of course, you can see right here that we've got 1 spot empty, and that's so you can still plant at least 1 crop, and then again, purchase at least 1 animal. So you get some coop poop and some barn poop. Last thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to place 1 disc on year 1, which is there, right there, and then place 1 white disc on the spring. And then there's 4 seasons, of course, going spring, summer, fall, and then winter. Once you reach the end of winter, you will then advance this to year 2, and then you go back to spring and do it all over again. And last, your starting resources. You basically have 1 gold you'll start off with at the beginning of the game, and then 1 ruby. One thing to note is I will be using cubes for this game. Basically, these cubes represent a value of whatever the resource is placed inside of the box specifically. So what I mean by that is this 1 brown cube represents a value of 1. So while it's in that box, it's a 1 gold. If I had a silver cube in this box here, that represents 3 produce, and then the yellow cube, which also comes in the game, that would represent 6. So the values of 1, 3, and 6. All right. Basically, that's how the game goes, and then you're going to also gain your starting hand. Your starting hand will consist of all 10 of these cards. Each one of these cards are called skills, and they're all going to be level 1 skills. Starting at the top, you've got your farming skill, your livestock skill, your fish skill. Coming down here, I'll talk about sleep in a second. You've got your hunt skill, mine, forage, cook, craft, and then improve. As you can see by the colors of the card, each one of these colors also kind of corresponds to the different colors of cards that are laid out in the town. So if I wanted to play my cook skill, that would represent me cooking one of these food item cards right here. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. One of the cool things about this game is on your turn and at the start of your turn, you're going to look at all 10 of these cards. All 10 of these cards will start off in your hand. And again, we'll talk about the sleep skill in just a second. But all 10 of these cards will start off in your hand, and you will choose one of them to play. First thing that you want to look at is the name, which is in the top left there, and then how much time it's going to spend to play that skill. For the farm skill, it doesn't cost any time, but if we came down here to mine, this would cost 1 time. And what that means is I'm spending more time working on my farm that season on mining, which means I have to discard 1 card from my hand, and that'll be placed sideways next to my cards that I was able to play this turn. So I won't be able to play all of the skills each season. So you're picking and choosing which skills are going to most benefit you the best during that season itself. Underneath the picture there, or the name of the time there, you have the picture, and also shows you that it is a level 1 skill. And it's going to give you 2 abilities. You've got a water 1 crop, or plant 1 crop. And then underneath that line, obviously you have a second ability, water 1 crop or plant 1 crop. But how you do this is you're going to spend a ruby, and that's why mining is important. So if I wanted the second ability, which is always better, it's what is called boosting the ability, I would have to spend 1 of these rubies that I've collected while mining in order to boost that ability. I'm grabbing it, nothing. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of push your skills to the max and really get the most out of each one of your skills. But as I said before, you need to play your cards right, because each one of these skills can cost time, which means you won't be able to do maybe everything that you want to do during your turn. Such as like livestock right here. Again, it doesn't cost you much, because collecting from 1 animal means I'm just like basically milking a cow, or you're gaining some eggs. Basically any kind of animal product that you would get in the game is called a good, and gaining goods would go into your goods box here. So we've got our produce and our goods, and that'll all be in the iconography section of the rulebook. So pretty simple to kind of look up, and I can show you real quick what that would look like. So everything's kind of represented quite nicely in the rules. A lot of icons, but honestly, it's really intuitive on how everything kind of is played out in the game. So very neat stuff. But yeah, basically, I'll do a quick rundown of what each one of these skills do. And then from there, you should have a pretty good idea of how the game plays, because each one of these skills really doesn't change, but they'll be upgraded. But let me talk about it after I talk about each skill. So farming obviously is going to let you put crops into your farm. And when you plant a crop, it's going to go into an empty slot. One of the cool things is when you plant a crop, it doesn't matter what season it is, but in order for me to water the crop, it will depend on the season. So if I plant this crop here, and because we're in spring, I'm allowed to water it as long as I play the skill that says water 1 crop. We're good there. This says that I can water it, and I'll place 2 cubes representing produce on this card. And then now this crop is ready to harvest. But again, I have to water it on the specific season. So these are seasonal, which is really neat. The next thing I can do is play the livestock card, which I kind of talked about a second ago. So you're going to be collecting from animals, and then this will also allow you to purchase animals. This one specifically says I can purchase a coop animal. So if we look at the animal market here, we've got some coop animals and some barn animals. Obviously, the barn animals are going to be able to provide a little bit more produce, goods rather. But you can see that the sheep and then the chicken, that doesn't cost anything, and that price right there is represented next to the right there. But yeah, so the cows cost 2, but you could get a lot of goods from that, which is nice. Fishing's pretty sweet, because this allows you to basically catch 1 lake fish. Lake fish or just fish in general, could be a really good way of gaining points, but you have to have the most by the end of the game. So if I was to catch a bunch of river fish at the end of the game, if I have the most river fish, I would gain 5 victory points, or in this game they're called star points. Anytime you're collecting something, it will always get placed into a collection pile. On the game mat, or the farm mat that's provided here or shown here, basically that's what this represents. Anytime I would collect something such as this perch, I would just place it right here in that collection pile. It's like a little collection shed that I can utilize. But basically, the fish are great ways of gaining points. However, if I wanted to, we'll just take a look at this lake fish. I can spend an additional time to gain 1 good. So instead of relying always on these animals here and trying to collect from them, I can always use the fish and collect animal products from them, or goods from them. The next thing that we could do is hunt. Hunting is another way of gaining a ton of points. but they also provide gold, which is one of the rarest resources in this game. So each one of these slimes, I could always gain the gold right there and then immediately discard this card, and those discarded cards would of course go right here. Or I could take this card and I can collect it again. It would go into the collection pile, and for every one slime that's of a different color, so if I had the yellow slime, green slime, and the blue slimes, or even the purple slime, if I had all 4 of those slimes in my collection pile at the end of the game, I would get a total of 8 points, which is great. So definitely a great way of getting points, but it is one of the rarest, it does provide one of the rarest resources, which is gold. So very cool there. Mining and foraging, and I'll talk about these together here. Basically, when you mine, this will let you always draw a certain amount of cards. You'll look at those cards and then choose which cards that you want to bring with and then discard the rest. So for the mining level 1, it says mine 2, keep 1, discard the other. Where foraging is always a blind draw, but foraging provides materials which will basically allow you to craft specific items, which can net you a ton of points at the end of the game, which is pretty great. Basically, these would look something like this. Those are materials right there. As soon as I would collect that, basically, I would just discard it like that. But of course, I would gain 1 cube representing material. The other thing that the foraging deck has are insects, which if I collect these are kind of fun. For every insect that I get, I will get a total amount of points, depending on how many insects I have in my collection pile at the end of the game. So there's all sorts of stuff in the forageables deck, and I thought it'd be cool to have like almost the Pokemon style. Hey, you gotta collect some bugs while you're playing the game. Pretty neat. And then ores are really cool too, because you can collect sets of ores, and there's 3 different types of ores, as well as, of course, the rubies. So anytime you collect a ruby ore, you would just collect that specific, gem right there that I showed you in the beginning. So basically you get one of those. But copper, silver, and gold ores, as long as you have at least 3 of those in your collection shed or collection area at the end of the game, you get points based on which ores. So copper would give you 3 points. So another way of gaining points. Points. The other thing that you can do in this game, like I said before, is craft. So with those materials, you can craft right here. Again, this wouldn't cost you anything, but basically you can craft 1 item, which would basically be any one of these 3. And the cool thing is it'll tell you right there what it's going to need for you to collect, or craft rather. So if we're looking at the iron fence, sorry if I'm shaking too much, basically I would need 1 good, 1 produce, and then 2 materials, and that would give me 2 gold. Or I can place it in my collection area, and it would be worth 1 point for every slime I would have in my collection area at the end of the game. So 5 points would be the max, but that's a lot of points. You don't really get a ton of points in this game from normally just 1 action. Normally it takes you more time, so building an iron fence and hopefully getting a ton of slime could net you some good stuff. And same thing with the bee house there. If you're collecting a lot of insects, that could be pretty great. And then the spindle, as we could see, it only costs 1 good and then 2 materials, and then it would give you 3 points at the end of the game. So again, you're a lot of decision making being had, because you're choosing to either basically sell that item that you've just crafted, or you can go ahead and keep it for yourself and then gain those points. All right, 2 more skills we could talk about is cooking. Cooking is pretty cool. Basically, when you cook, we've got 3 different styles of skills. You got level 1, and then of course you're gonna have level 2 and level 3 skills. And I'll talk more about those right after I'm done talking about these basic level 1s. But with a level 1 cooking skill, I basically take this food and I immediately just put it in my collection area. However, if I was to upgrade my cooking skill to level 2, I'd be able to take an additional pretty cheap action for free, as well as gain this as a point. And then lastly, if I had a level 3, what that iconography means, basically I get to return a discarded card, one that I would have used to spend for time for another card, and place it back into my hand so I can use it for later during that season, which is huge. It's basically giving me energy. Think of it just like food. I'm eating food and getting more energy, letting me use that energy for more skills. So the cooking skill, again, you can kind of see basically just like crafting, you would need specific either produce or goods, but that's what would give you some more energy and basically try to get some more actions out of a season, which is pretty nice. And then the last thing here is improve. So basically to improve, you are going to clean up 1 light garbage. So if you have any garbage on your farm at the end of the game, they're worth negative points, which isn't the best thing. But you could always improve your farm by just playing the improve action or skill. And of course, if you'd like to, you can spend 1 ruby and you can renovate a structure. And each one of these structures, there's 3 of them, and I talked about it before: the basic house, the greenhouse plot, and then lastly the windmill plot. Each one of these costs 6 gold to renovate. However, once you do, you have this permanent ability that'll allow you to do all sorts of different stuff. So let's take a look at the house action, our ability here. Basically, now we've got the deluxe house. And then when you play the sleep skill, which we'll talk about right after this, you'll gain 1 gold. So this is a great way of gaining gold. And then, of course, if you're looking at the house, you're going to get 5 points at the end of the game for that. Talking about sleep. So how do you get all those cards back into your hand? Pretty simple. You sleep. This is basically you resting and you recuperating all these cards. So you follow this basically starting from 1 and going down to 4. Just note that the sleep skill can never be discarded, which is a reminder at the bottom of the card there. But basically, at this point, you can sell any number of resources. And we can see that right here as a little conversion chart. That's pretty nice. And if you don't have the mats, the game does come with a personal mat, just like you see here, which will have your tracker for the years, your seasons, and of course each one of those boxes. So you don't need the mats if you don't want them. It's just kind of nice to keep everything organized. The next thing you would do is return all skill cards back to your hand. Pretty simple. And then you get to upgrade 1 skill card. This is pretty great because the skill cards, like I said, can all be upgraded. There's level 2 and level 3. So if we looked at this one that I pulled out a little bit ago, this Forge level 2 card, it's going to cost me 1 time. All right. However, my skill got better. So now it says gather 2 forageables or I can harvest 2 crops. Whereas the other one said I can gather 1 forageable or harvest 1 crop. And then at the bottom it says harvest 2 crops if I boosted it, where this one says I get to gather 3 forageables. So I'm now leaning into the idea of foraging a little bit more. I'm kind of doing more with my turn, but it's going to cost me more time. Not everything costs more time, because one of the cool things about the hunt, well, actually one of the bad things really about the hunt skill in the beginning is it costs 2 time. It's actually the most expensive card to play. However, if you ever get your card up to level 3, it doesn't cost any time. That's because your sword has just become sharper. Your skills have become a lot more just better in general fighting those slimes. So the skill itself doesn't actually change, but the time does. So this will allow you to just get a lot more slimes, hopefully, by the end of the game for either gold or some more points. And then lastly, you would move the season tracker 1 space. And that's basically the whole entire game right there. Again, you're trying to do all this. It's a competitive game. However, there is a solo mode, and that would come with some villagers, which are right here. And these villagers are all explained in the rules. And basically, each one of these villagers, you're trying to gain friendship, trying to fulfill their requests, you're going to have some things that you just can't do that you're restricted from doing. And then hopefully, have enough gold to donate to the town or the village right afterwards. But yeah, basically at the end of the game, which is at the end of the 3rd year there, you will count up all your points from your collection pile right there. You'll count up all your points from any renovated structures, lose any points from any kind of garbage that you may still have left in your farm. And then lastly, for every 2 gold you have at the end of the game, that is worth 1 point. So very simple in counting up the points, and it's just about managing those skills, the skills and the different animals, the crops, the things that you can do, and then of course managing your time. So again, I hope this makes a little bit more sense. I know this is a little bit a longer video, not my intention, but also I wanted to try to let everybody know how this game plays and some of the unique things about this game. So if you do like this and you are interested in getting a copy, March 1st, 2023, this game will be available. Again, the mats will be sold separately, but they will be sold on the exact same day that Cozy Oaks will be sold. So if you are interested in Cozy Oaks, it will come in this small little really cool looking box. And yeah, March 1st, that's going to be the big day. So hope to see some excitement, and hopefully you guys are excited as I am. Thanks.